Hello, everyone. I wanted to post a video about the assignment we had on the copyright timeline because it's a lot of information. And um, some students had questions about the assignment. And so I wanted to respond and kind of wrap up the why we had the assignment, the you know, takeaways and stuff like that. And so, in terms of the meaning, why we actually did that, I know it required some focus, processing a lot of information. That is actually a really good introduction to the class. If you found yourself struggling with that assignment, I'm going to try to give you some tips to help you move through this kind of information more easily, more efficiently, but also a word of encouragement to strap on your seatbelt because what we're dealing with is very complex, and we'll get into that a little bit here in a second. But the reason for that assignment was to recognize a few things. One of which is the relationship between technology and the law. Another one is to look at duration, copyright duration in particular. There's a trend there. I want to ask, why you guys think that is, what impacts it has on creativity. I'd like for you to put, when we get there, think about that. And please do use the comments. When I put up the information, if there's things that are confusing in the presentation, that's why we're using YouTube as a platform. It's, first of all, the most stable interactive platform, I think, in the world for posting videos and having conversations. So do use the comments, ask questions. If you've got a question, chances are you're not the only one. And so for the benefit of the class, even if you feel like it's a silly question, I want to encourage you to do that so that everyone can see, oh, I had that question too, or, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. So do use the comment section. I also, put that assignment together so that you could discover resources that will help you move through what's super complex. And it's easy to get lost in different sorts of rabbit holes. Go chasing a bit of information, and then you end up more confused than when you started. So there are resources that are really good that exist. And I tend to add them to the bottom of the Canvas page so you can see what's there. So I tend to collect the best resources. And so if you do well on various assignments, I'll tend to ask you what did you seek? And then I'll go check it out. And if it's a good resource that will help the whole class, I'll add it to the Canvas module at the bottom of the Canvas page that says class resources. Then I'll just let everybody know how the class did in terms of a breakdown, percentages of, it was a 5-point assignment. So there are 20 questions, so every question was a quarter of a point. And so we'll review some of the ones that people tended to have more problems with. Okay, so in terms of technology and the law, so that's one of the reasons we want to look at copyright as a window onto this issue. So that assignment, that timeline lets us look at technology, this relationship between technology and the law. And the issue of time is completely central to copyright itself because it's based on how much time a creator has to be protected after they create their work, if it's valuable, so that they alone can enjoy the royalties that come from it or any financial benefit. And then after that time goes by, another window of time opens up where the entire, all citizens of the country can use it without paying. And that's called the public domain, as you remember from last time. So we're in a situation where technology is fast, obviously, especially in our digital era, but lawmaking or legislation is very slow, whether it's because of, government is very hierarchical with, our system of government. Laws come out of Congress and have to be approved by the Senate and then signed by the president. So you're looking at all of these different bodies of government. And so the result of all of that is that there's a reactionary relationship. Usually technology is at the front end, and then if it impacts society enough, the law catches up and says, okay, hold on, we've got to regulate this. And so the law is always reacting to and behind technology. Law is playing catch up. And it does so in a way where it addresses in broad strokes first. So it'll address an issue with an act, and then come back with modifications, or amendments to that act for years afterwards. So the '76 law addressed some major issues, but then had to return to continue to sort of refine and address. And so that adds to this sort of complexity and the wormhole effect that you can get lost in, in these laws and amendments, and they're retroactive and all of this. So I'm very aware as I try to teach this topic that it can be super confusing. And so that's why it's really important to have good resources on hand to simplify. And then the last point to recognize in terms of this relationship between technology and the law is that technology can be, very subversive, meaning that it's looking to undo or to look for loopholes that the law has not yet addressed. We see this not only in copyright law, but also in the recent developments on Wall Street with GameStop, et cetera. People are always looking for a way to get ahead. Technology helps that. And so the law is, once again, slow, but this relationship, I guess, is not confined only to copyright, but you can see it elsewhere in society. So I just wanted to kind of look at that as some of the main reasons why we've got, how to make sense of why we did this assignment, because it lets you see that kind of larger societal sort of dynamic between technology and the law. And so keep that in mind, because it'll help you make sense of the assignment when we get to reviewing the assignment here in a minute. Another reason why we did the assignment is to look at duration. So copyright protection started, with the Constitution, 1790, and then even just in the first 120 years, 1790 to 1909, you can see it's gone from 28 to 56 years. And then from 1909, so in the 20th century, plus another 10 years, so that's 110 years there, you've got from 56 years up to about 150 years if you put the average life expectancy up to about 80 years for women, 75 years for men, so you can say 140 to 150 years. And so when you look at the full picture from 1790 to 1909, it's really interesting. It's grown by a factor of 10, from as little as 14 years if you have no renewal period in 1790. You just take the first initial period of 14 years, all the way up to about 140 years. So that's a growth factor of 10. And there's never a time when it goes the other way. There's no movement to reduce copyright protection. And so why do you think that is? That's a true question. I've got my read on it, but I'd like for you guys to reflect on why copyright duration is always extending in time. And put that into the comment section. Maybe have a little conversation down there. We could be crazy like that. Technology is on our side. Let's be rebels. Okay. Now I want to look at the assignment itself. So once again, the design is not only to see these trends of duration, like we just saw. It always seems to be expanding and getting longer. You might begin answering that question by whose interests are protected in that situation, or who's, quote, disenfranchised, who's kind of losing out on that deal. That might give you a initial position to kind of look at that issue and be like, okay, who's winning, who's not, or not. You may have your own take on it, but that's kind of how I came into it. Anyway, and then this other trend of technology always being sort of in advance of the law and creating new ways for people to create and to become copyright owners. And so the law playing catch up. So once again, that's to recap the first 2 points. And then to encounter the complexity. And you guys did that. I had more than, I had probably 4 or 5 emails or comments in the submission window that was just like, I'm losing my mind with this assignment. I'm spending tons of time researching laws that I didn't understand. the 76 law, retroactively impacted lots of different forms of media. And so how can I tell what's the right date for a form of media? And so I wanted to remind you guys that in the class intro presentation, and when I reminded you about the assignment itself, I said, go to the bottom of the Canvas page. There are resources down there. The primary one is the primary most important one would be if you just Google the name of the assignment, copyright timeline, the first thing you get is the United States Government Copyright Office page has an actual timeline. And so between the presentation that I gave you, the PowerPoint presentation from last week, or I guess from earlier this week, and then these resources, you're going to get all but about 3 or 4 of them, at which time you can use things like Wikipedia to just kind of cross-reference and search what the answers from the answer bank are for the 4 that you don't have, and that should pretty much take care of it. And so when I go to see the successful submissions, I asked them, what did you use? And sure enough, I used presentations along with the Copyright Timeline website that she posted at the bottom of the Canvas page. And here it is. Here's another student said, I used copyright.gov timeline. This was my main resource. I used Wikipedia for the last few. There were some that I didn't, the one I didn't know was the last one left, so it had to fit in the last answer. Here are some other resources so when you guys do well, I ask you, where you got your information. And so here's another one, and then I'll review that, and if it stands up, if it's efficient and clear and comprehensive enough, I'll put it on the resource link at the bottom of the Canvas page. And so this is how the people that succeeded. Here are some others, library guides. Different universities like Cornell has a really good copyright website associated with their library. So anyway, these are some testimonials from students that that did well on the assignment. So I wanted to share that with the class. Now, in terms of what we're dealing with here, the scope of this topic is basically, the only comprehensive text that's super in depth is 1,830 pages long and $565. So students that are in law school, for example, that need like the authoritative edition on copyright licensing, pretty much, use this cone text. And because of the Teach Act from 1998, where you're starting to get distance learning going on, you have restrictions. So, there is a rule of thumb that 10% of a text can be used. And so that would be 183 pages that I could use from this book. And I have used some of this. So for your presentations, for example, I'm giving, I have scanned and copied. So used my authority as a teacher under the Teach Act to empower you students with the very best, most powerful resource without, of course, requiring you to pay $565 and read almost 2,000 pages of text. But that's kind of what we're dealing with when you look at our topic area, So yes, it is very complex. It is very studied, like it requires lawyers. A team of lawyers basically put this together for law students. And so when you're wondering, why this class is difficult, recognize that I'm sort of in between this level of complexity and then your textbook is good, right? But it's an undergraduate text. It's kind of that next level down. And so I'm sort of mediating all of this, hopefully for your benefit. But yes, it is difficult. So like I said, strap on your seatbelts because the class is, this is an introduction. This is one of your easier assignments, I should say. And so in terms of student performance, so like I said, every question was a quarter of a point. And so Those who scored between 0 to 2 points, which would be between 11 and 20, so everything wrong or no submission at all, or more than 11 wrong, that was a little over 10% of the class. So there are 42 students in the class, so that would be about 4 students. If you got 3 to 4 points, that was just under half of the class, and then 5 points, so between 0 and 2 wrong, you got full credit at 5 points. That was just about half of the class there. So you can see 90 or 89% of the class did, acceptably well. 3 points on a 5-point assignment is just over halfway, and so you need to be careful there. And so that's why I broke these down. So if you got 3 points, there were about 4 students that got 3 points, and another four students that got between either no submission or only got 2 points. That's about 20% of the class, meaning that about 80% of the class is what I would consider to be doing satisfactory, so 4 to 5 points on this assignment. So I'm generally happy with the results of the class, and so that's why I wanted to share these results so that you can see that, generally speaking, other members of the class are having success. So if you're struggling, by all means, reach out to your group partner. Everybody right now should be in a group of 2 to get ready for the presentations, which are starting next week. So if you've got a presentation next week, you need to be getting started this weekend because it's due on Monday. And so your reading is not long. It's 10 to 20 pages for each presentation, and that's on the Canvas website. Okay, so let's look over the review. So the trouble spots were numbers 5 through 12 and 17 through 19. So I've got 5 through 12 here, 17 through 19 there. Now, when it comes down to looking at the relationship of technology, if you've taken Introduction to Mass Communication, you should know that the photograph, for example, just precedes this time period. The motion picture, the invention of the motion picture, just precedes this time period. So you've got a couple of these. Computer software is just preceding the 1980s. So 1960s and 70s, you're getting some of the first computer software programs. So if you know your mass communication history, if you've taken MCJ 101, then the recognition between technology, forms of technology, records, motion pictures, photographs, and these and law is going to help you to succeed on an assignment like this. And so that's what I need you guys to recognize. And so copyright includes photography for the first time, makes it federally protected in 1865. It includes plays, the public performance of plays. Shortly after plays, plays were protected in 1856, and then the copyright protects public performances themselves shortly after that, 1897. Motion pictures were federally protected for the first time in 1912. Software protected for the first time in 1980. So these are some of the ones that were troublesome, and I'm showing you how, the way the assignment is designed is to show you the relationship between technology comes first, and then shortly after that, the law will come into play. So usually 20 to 30 years. Okay, so those are some tips to help you navigate assignments like these. And then if you know the duration trends, so 1909 is important because it's a major copyright law, and it updates duration from 28 plus 14 to 28-year initial term plus 28 year renewal term. And so 28 plus 28 is a way to recognize the importance of the 1909 law. Plus it introduced the mechanical license for the first time to help even the playing field for piano roll companies, because the Aeolian company had a monopoly. So there's a trust busting component to this compulsory law, compulsory mechanical license. We'll get to that when we talk about mechanicals. And then you come down to 1978, and you've got Life Plus 50 for the actually, this does not belong here. Get rid of that. It belongs here. Oh, come on already. So yes, life plus 50, and when the 1976 goes into effect, the 1976 law goes into effect in 1978. This is being a problem. 1980 is when software is protected. I'm struggling a little bit with PowerPoint. What's new, right? And there we go. So anyway, that's to kind of, help you through some of the rough spots by using the design. So if you recognize the relationship between technology and the law, and you know your mass comm history, or you can just look, say, when were motion pictures invented, you can make a pretty good educated guess that after the invention, the law is then going to react and say, let's actually protect that. And then if you know your duration updates, when it goes 28 to 28, life plus 50, when it goes 14 to 14, 28 plus 14, that it will also. So those two main sort of rationale behind this assignment will help you actually to navigate the assignment itself. Okay, now let's update to 1990s to the present. So 1995 is the DPR SRA, which is short, basically means that sound recordings or Circle P, they are protected for performance as long as that performance is digital for the first time. So they were thinking in the future, the law actually in this instance did imagine a situation that would come to pass in the future, which is that analog radio would be replaced by streaming services. And so because of this law, Spotify has to pay record companies, who are the owner of Circle P usually, for the right, a performance right, And then that was finally updated in 2018 so that they could act like regular radio and just pay one fee for all of the music that ASCAP, for example, or BMI controls for Circle C. Now you've got a parallel situation for Circle P, thanks to the Music Modernization Act of 2018. 1997, you've got the very first laws that come in to say, okay, we've got to do something about, Napster and Kazaa and stuff like that. So these piracy websites, point-to-point distribution of recordings without any payment, right? So these are online piracy. This is your very first response to that. It doesn't have a lot of teeth in it, but it's where the government finally is, and it's, they're not far behind at that point in time. 1998, you've got the Sonny Bono Copy Term Extension Act, so updating to life plus 70. Talked about the Teach Act earlier, so what enables me to make copies and distribute them to you, and what regulates that I can only do 10% of a text as a rule of thumb. That's not a hard and fast law, but that's a guideline, is the Teach Act that came around in 2002. And so that's when you've got online learning starting to crank up. Okay. Artist Theft Prevention Act, the ATPA, basically says that because artists are recording digitally, it's easy to have an unpublished work leaked out and, to become infringed on, so to become distributed before it's even released. And so the ATPA basically protects artists who have recorded their new album, but it's not yet released officially, and somebody got into the studio, maybe the bass player got a copy and started and sent it around to his friends, and then it got out, basically. So how can people be protected in that situation? Thanks to the Artist Theft Prevention Act. The Stop Act, Stop Online Piracy of 2011, really starts to isolate infringing websites. So it's continuing to put teeth into this earlier legislation, which has really been the biggest thing in the music business over the last 20 years, is how online piracy and how to basically protect Circle P that in a digital environment where it's so easy to copy, paste, distribute, duplicate and distribute to infringe copyright, basically. And so that is a review of this assignment. I will go back as needed and go over assignments. Um, what you need to do for sure is to make sure that you've got your assignment correct, and then use that second page of the assignment to actually write why these dates are important. And so, like I said, the Teach Act, for example, has resulted in a 10% copy of digitally distributed textbooks, which could represent a loss for print publishers who are not selling their textbooks. So I'm not requiring you guys to buy a $562 text that's 1,800 pages long, but I am copying some of that without you having to pay for it. So I'm protected as your teacher by doing that. So my Canvas distribution is a digital distribution of that. And so make sure that you fill in that second page, because that worksheet, when it's all correct, will become a big chunk of your study guide for the first test. Okay, so make sure you stay on this, even if this class takes a little bit more time to prepare for. You're going to need these resources. So I've got it structured so that you do these assignments. Yes, they may be difficult, but when they're correct, they are going to make life a whole bunch easier for you when it comes down to test time. Okay, please do use the comment section. Let me know why you think copyright duration has been expanding and expanding and expanding. And I'll talk to you later. Thank you.